The 2012 version of the Turtles introduced many new characters to the lore, but it also reinvented classic ones. However, some characters had the peculiarity of being both. The character I'll be discussing today began his life as a new addition, but ultimately evolved into a classic one, much to the surprise of his creators. Join me today as I walk you through the strange journey of Chris Bradford as Dogpound and Rahzar. Chris Bradford was a martial arts and movie superstar who owned a chain of dojos across the country. Due to his fame, he also had a cartoon based on his image in the 1980s or 1990s. But behind Chris's success, a big, dark secret was waiting to ruin his career. He was a pupil of the Shredder, and his dojo was a covert recruiting center for the Foot Clan. The funny thing is that this secret would not end up affecting his career, but it would lead to his humiliation, transformation, death, and demonic resurrection. From the start, Chris only knew that his master was betrayed by Hamato Yoshi, but learning the truth about the Shredder never really affected his allegiance to him. This feud between Yoshi and Saki would ultimately become Chris's problem as well. After it became clear that Yoshi was still alive in New York and was training students, Shredder assigned Chris to search for him. But knowing that Chris didn't have enough reach across the city, he paired him up with Xever, who ran the South American gangs for the Foot. To Chris, Xever was a street rat and not someone he could trust. And to be fair, Xever's experience wouldn't be necessary at all, because Michelangelo had a man crush on Chris, and after the superstar accepted his friendship online, Mikey paid him a visit to his dojo. It didn't take long for Chris to realize that Mikey had no knowledge of his secret activities with the clan, and he taught Mikey a secret kata, knowing it would lead the rest of the turtles to a trap. Chris made Mikey feel comfortable around the dojo, until he decided to kidnap him with the expectation that his brothers would come looking for him. After seeing the other turtles practicing the secret kata that Mikey showed them, Splinter warned that he had seen that technique before, from the Shredder. The turtles rescued Mikey, and together they defeated Chris and Xever. The two henchmen continued to fail on their missions, so Shredder decided to handle the turtles himself. But their timing was poor. The turtles were disarming a mutagen bomb at the top of the Wolf Hotel when Chris and Xever started their attack. But even under pressure, the turtles managed to corner the two henchmen, right next to the mutagen container. Probably not understanding what he was dealing with, Chris decided to break the container with the hopes it would kill everyone involved. The breakdown only affected the villains. The turtles moved on to a really tight fight with the Shredder that was interrupted when the Shredder discovered what had happened to his henchmen. Chris, who had been bitten earlier by the Shredder's Akita, had been transformed into a large, clumsy humanoid dog with protruding bones. This surprise allowed the turtles to escape. From this point on, Bradford would be nicknamed Dogpound by the turtles. Those protruding bones were actually quite useful to Chris in his new form. His spikes and claws acted as weapons, and he also possessed a remarkably hard, bony paw. Some other elements were part of his original design, such as his mustache. And of course, he acquired the enhanced senses of a dog, like hearing and smell. But despite these enhancements, Chris had lost his edge. He looked too cute and unrecognizable compared to his previous life, and he was finding his size hard to manage. His life would change again after being sent to capture Baxter Stockman. He realized in that moment that Baxter was the key to turning him back into a human. Under coercion, Baxter began working on a cure, but his efforts were interrupted by the turtles, who were searching for a molecular centrifuge to save Mikey's life. In the ensuing fight, Bradford fell into a vat of mutagen, and by the time he emerged, he was no longer Dogpound. He had become a rotten-fleshed wolf with even more protruding bones. Now nicknamed Rahzar, Bradford was satisfied with the new, strong and lean body he had gained. He was stronger, faster, and more powerful than ever. He had also developed a new mutant ability of throwing his claws at his enemies like daggers. Unfortunately for him, the Shredder quickly found ways to make him and Fishface redundant once he created Bebop and Rocksteady. Bradford tried to stay relevant for a while, but during a mission to distract the turtles at Coney Island, he ended up getting drowned by Leatherhead. His master would soon die at the hands of Leonardo, just a few days later. Chris's story should have ended there. But when his master was scheduled for a demonic resurrection, Tiger Claw sent Fishface to recover Bradford's body from the bottom of the ocean to bring him back from the dead first. The demon Cavaxis brought him back to life, reuniting Bradford with Xever in a mission to gather all the required parts to resurrect their master. Bradford was still pretty much himself, but things were not the same. His loyalty wasn't to the Shredder anymore, but to Cavaxis, and at a certain point, he even considered stopping the demon's plan to unleash the Netherworld into our reality. Once the Shredder was resurrected and all control Tiger Claw had over the demon was destroyed, Cavaxis opened a chasm to the Netherworld, allowing ghostly entities to invade the world of the living. During this battle, Tiger Claw pushed Bradford back to the Netherworld, and once Michelangelo saved the day, the chasm was closed, and with it, the Shredder, Cavaxis, and Bradford were gone forever. The initial plan for Bradford was actually quite genius. The art team behind the show utilized computer-generated textures to explore new mutations that would have been more challenging to animate in 2D, and would have looked significantly cooler in CGI. Dog fur was one of the options, so they made the clever decision to create Dogpound, a humanoid Akita that was very loyal to the Shredder. That is, of course, a reference to Hachiko, a famous real-life Japanese dog that continued to wait for his master, who had passed away while away from home. As for Bradford as a character, he was a clear parody of Chuck Norris. The art team went even further during the 4th season by featuring segments of Bradford's cartoon, which was inspired by Norris's short-lived Karate Commandos cartoon. Rahzar's look and feel was designed by Ireneo Miramba, who gave Bradford the appearance of a rotted wolf monster. Voice actor Clancy Brown voiced the character in all its phases, even in video games, although he was voiced by Fred Tatasciore for Wrath of the Mutants. All 3 versions of Bradford were playable in the TMNT Legends game, and they also appeared together in the Weird World of Worm as part of a simulated scenario. However, I began this video by saying that Dogpound's evolution into Rahzar was surprising, even to his creators, so let me elaborate on that. During the 2nd season, Playmates requested more mutants on the show. The reason was quite obvious: to sell more toys. However, the creative team quickly realized that introducing new mutant characters was a hit-or-miss situation. According to Brandon Auman, mutating random people wasn't as impactful as mutating characters the audience already knew, like the Pulverizer. This was one of the reasons why Dogpound was transformed into Rahzar. But a more compelling reason for his transformation was that the team was getting tired of Dogpound. Instead of retiring the character, they decided to introduce Rahzar into the show by turning Dogpound into a character they were actually interested in using. After the initial impact of having Rahzar around, both he and Fishface lost their purpose on the show when Bebop and Rocksteady were introduced. This was ironic because, in a way, Dogpound and Fishface were a Season 1 substitute for the classic duo. The thing that surprised me while researching for this video was the missed potential for this character. Bradford was very loyal to the Shredder, and this was never really put into question. It's hard not to compare him to Hun from the 2003 show, a character who was loyal to the Shredder until he realized he had been lied to. An obvious reason this never happened in this show was that dogs, for the most part, have unconditional loyalty to their masters. This was a cool concept for a henchman, but it removed any opportunities for character growth. If anything, this should have been a tragic arc of a henchman's loyalty to his master, transforming him into a monster. Instead, Bradford continued acting like an obedient dog, even after turning into a wolf. But the reason Bradford never had a character arc was that Nickelodeon discouraged it. Episodes could be broadcast in any order around the world. Hence, they had to make sure that continuity wasn't too tight between episodes. While this was convenient and likely contributed to the show's popularity, it seriously undermined characters like Chris Bradford, who, despite undergoing physical changes, never underwent a character arc. What do you think about Chris Bradford? Have you noticed that he was never given a character arc? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.